Wish there was a movie showing right now.
Me too. A film about our lives. Everything that's happened so far. And the last scene will just be us standing right here. Just you and me.
Welcome to episode 85 of the Backlot 605 podcast. I am one of your hosts. I am Casey Kelderman.
I'm Brian Mensing.
And Brian, today we are joined in our third week of our Pride Month mini-series by Jake Martin, who is joining us for the first time on the main show, but he has appeared on a Backlot 605 podcast. In the past, he was a part of our Killer Countdown episode ranking the top 8 John Carpenter films alongside Blake Ginneth and Jake. How's it going?
I'm good.
Good.
I don't know. It's a rainy day, so I'm a little sleepy, but I'm okay.
I think the rain is only setting the mood for today's topic, which is the movie Mysterious Skin, which was brought up by you. And looking back at our messages, there was no hesitation either on what movie you wanted to cover when I asked you to come on. It was, no, we're doing Mysterious Skin, and that's it. And man, what a movie you got us into, Jake. But
yeah.
I think we'll wait for that a little later on the show. We'll get to what we usually cover on the show here, some of the coming soon films. But yeah, that's today's topic, Mysterious Skin. And I do want to give maybe a little forewarning. I think we will spoil the movie. I think you have to when talking about the movie in depth like we're going to. So spoiler warning for Mysterious Skin. If you have not watched it, it is available on the Criterion channel right now. And it is also available to rent on YouTube. I paid a whole $2 for this movie on YouTube. So yeah, it's pretty easy to find. So that'll be the main topic once we get to that here in a few minutes. But first, let's jump into our coming soon titles for the week. You can check out our coming soon article written by our very own Derek Vierink. Each and every week, he covers everything coming soon to theaters, drive-in theaters, streaming, and anything else in between. But the first couple movies, this is a comedy-heavy week that we got coming up. The first movie we should talk about is Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. 1, this is a terrible title. 2, this is a new Netflix film starring Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams alongside Mr. Pierce Brosnan. And this is about a singing competition, which is, just all the hit rage right now with the kids. So Eurovision. What did you guys think of this trailer for this movie? The trailer just dropped very recently. Anyone excited about this? Jake, what about you?
I'm nervous about it. I want it to be hilarious and I want it to be good. But I have that feeling with every Will Ferrell movie that is about to come out. Like, I'm going, is he going to be back with something worthy of his name? Because he hasn't. He's a lot like Adam Sandler in that respect, where the older he gets, the worse his movies end up being. But knowing that the filmmakers I think they shot it in Iceland, and they went there and they got a local crew, I think. But the weird part about this is Pierce Brosnan. Like, he's even referred to as my far more handsome dad. It's like, it's an odd casting to put him aside Will Ferrell. And I thought that right away. That's what caught my eye about it. Because at first I was like, oh, this is another Will Ferrell movie. But you put Pierce Brosnan's name on anything and I will watch it.
There can't be much of an age difference between the two either.
At this point, maybe 10 years.
I'll look it up.
That's what enough Hollywood makeup will do for you.
Yeah.
For me, this was more of a screaming of the typical Will Ferrell movie that I probably will have no interest in seeing whatsoever.
It'll be on your back burner for a while. maybe you'll watch it.
Brian is not a Will Ferrell guy, so this trailer is like the bane of his existence.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
no.
to give you some examples here, I have never seen like Talladega Nights or like all,
The
pretty
good
much.
ones.
Yeah, I've watched like 3 Will Ferrell movies, and I've only liked like 2 of them.
Which ones have you watched? Old School, I'm guessing.
At one point, even I think I even owned Old School at one point here. The Other Guys, which I
Which is
thoroughly
fun.
enjoy the Other Guys. Um, Oh, and I did see the unfortunate mishappenings of Bewitched.
Oh, Bewitched. That's bad on my net.
That was a
Yes,
movie.
that was one of those ones where the only saving grace is the other actor in that movie that I have a love-hate relationship with, and that was Steve Carell as Uncle Arthur. Like, he did an amazing Uncle Arthur. The rest of the movie was garbage.
I'm a big Nicole Kidman fan, so I liked her a lot. But yeah, Will's just kind of phoning it in that one.
Uh-huh.
But Old School I thought was great because it wasn't just Will Ferrell. It was a whole ensemble group that made it
Right.
work.
That's where
And
I think he works the best.
Right. He's as a leading man, he's not perfect. The only movie that he was in as a leading man that I love dearly and will rewatch is Stranger Than Fiction.
See,
Because
and I've
that
never
hit
seen
on
Yeah.
that's worth your time. Because I think as a drama performer, he's, especially getting older, it works for him a lot more.
Much like Adam
very
Sandler,
good.
like you mentioned earlier.
Uncut Gems, I mean,
Yes.
but then again, it's also A24 and they never do wrong. So
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I have a real quick, just kind of
Okay.
throwing that off. You're talking about the age and the drama and everything like that. Like, I picture like, do you see Will Ferrell maybe even going like the Bill Murray route, where he's kind of become more of an entity of what he is, and just kind of depending on what you're putting him into, like as he progresses and he gets older.
yes, and I think by the time that Will Ferrell hits 65, he'll have a legend status of sorts, even if he doesn't deserve it entirely. And I say that with love for Bill Murray as well. He's fine, but I think his legend outweighs what he actually did.
Valid.
A couple things. Pierce Brosnan is 14 years older than Will Ferrell.
He was an irresponsible teenager.
I guess that could
In Iceland,
very well
that could be a thing.
That could be. This movie looks terrible. I was trying to think of what is the last good Will Ferrell movie, and I was just scrolling through his IMDb from the last couple years. I mean, Lego Movie, which he is in, but besides that, I'm still scrolling and I cannot find anything. And I'm in The Other Guys. 2010 is probably the last thing that I'm seeing. Just scrolling through here really fast. I'm a Will Ferrell fan. Anchorman, Step Brothers, Talladega Nights are some of my favorite comedies ever. But he's been phoning it in for the last decade or so. He's just riding high on his name, and this looks exactly like what you would expect from a Will Ferrell comedy in 2020. And Netflix is just going to be banking on that, and there's no problem with that. This will find its audience, that's for sure. I mean, that new David Spade movie, what's that called? The Wrong Missy, found an audience. So I mean, this Will Ferrell movie will find an audience, especially on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
We'll end up in a couple months. We'll get the note that Netflix says it's one of their best watched movies ever, and they just signed Will Ferrell to a 7-figure deal.
A Sandler style deal, yeah, I'm sure. So that comes out on Netflix June 26th. Also on that same day, we got a couple new releases that are also comedies. We got finally My Spy, which will land on Amazon Prime Video on the same day, starring Mr. Dave Bautista. This was supposed to hit theaters last summer, but was rescheduled for March and then pulled during COVID. So now it is finally coming out. And with all that being said, I thought this movie had already came out until I saw it in our note.
No, you're thinking.
Yeah, I thought it showed up and disappeared.
Well, I mean, it was supposed to come out, hit theaters last summer, and then it was supposed to come out, I remember, right before Corona happened. But I wasn't excited then. I'm not excited now, even if it's free on Amazon.
Wow. I mean, I think that with Dave Bautista, he's got a lot of charm,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he might make it work. But it feels like a kindergarten cop thing, and they've done this before.
Right.
So I think it'll be like a Sunday afternoon, throw it on kind of movie. It's not going to be terrible, and it's not going to be the best comedy ever.
Yeah.
It's just going to be this in between movie, like a comfy pajama movie.
Yeah, directed by Peter Siegel, who did, he did Tommy Boy, which is an all-timer for me. So maybe, like you said, maybe a Saturday, Sunday afternoon movie, but I'm not rushing out to watch it.
Right.
Yeah. The one thing I will give Batista is that I do think that the potential is there. I think he's running into the, especially after he made the comment about making good movies. I forget who's commenting against on Twitter or something like that, but about
Yeah, it was
making.
about the Escape Plan 3 or something like that he was
Yeah.
commenting on. Yeah.
Well, that's what he just come out with or whatever. Somebody was talking about that he only makes, and his response is he only makes good movies. I'm like, Dave, I think he's got great potential. He definitely works perfectly for his role in the Guardians movie. The little bit part that he had in Blade Runner, I think, was very good. I think he's got the potential there. I just think that some of the work that he's picked has just not been the right thing, especially
Once
if he
again,
Yeah.
go ahead.
especially if he thinks I think he needs to stick with more of the action and the dramatic stuff than he's going to be able to pull off the comedy. Because just because somebody in coming from wrestling, like say Cena, for example, can pull off a comedy doesn't mean he can.
Well, I mean, he can. He shows it in the Guardians. I just don't think he's a leading man. Is the big difference.
True.
Like Stuber and My Spy. So
Much like Will Ferrell there, it's somebody who works best in an ensemble cast
yes.
and not somebody. I mean, I thought that, Dave Bautista first caught my eye in Spectre
Mm-hmm.
as the henchman who doesn't say a word, but has, I think, one of the coolest openings for a henchman. Just he shows up on the table and bashes the guy's head against the thing and then squeezes his eyes in. I mean, and doesn't say a word at all. He terrified me in that movie, and he's such a brute. So yeah, as an action guy and as an ensemble comedy, I think it works best for him. But this, I'm like, it'll be cute, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
Another
cute's
movie.
okay sometimes.
Yeah, another movie that might fall in that same line as we're talking here is Irresistible. This comes to VOD June 26th. Stars Steve Carell, Rose Byrne, Chris Cooper, and Mackenzie Davis. It is about this political person, ex-political person who joins a small town who's trying to elect a new mayor. It's written and directed by Steve Carell's good buddy Jon Stewart. So that at least very much interests me, and I said I was a Will Ferrell fan. I'm a much bigger Steve Carell guy. Steve Carell is one of my favorite comedic actors, and this one looks fun. It looks like a fun throwback to like early 2000s comedies. Like that's what it reminds me of. Did you guys watch this trailer for Irresistible?
I saw bits and pieces. I didn't see the full thing, but I'm still intrigued by it just because Jon Stewart is known for his political satire, and he's done similar stuff in the past before, and I think he's got a strong cast to be able to back it up. So I do think it has a very strong contention.
Yeah, this one is because I saw Jon Stewart's directorial debut, Rosewater, and if you guys haven't seen that, it's a hell of a movie. But it was definitely a drama. It wasn't this. I think that he's going to be good at making the comedy work with a serious subject matter, which is something I think we need now. Is comedy talking about serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think he wants to get back in the game one way or another, even if it is behind the scenes, but he's got to talk. And did he write the film as well?
Yes, he
Yeah.
wrote
Okay.
the film.
Yep. Then I'm expecting it to be great, especially with that cast. And Rose Byrne is great. I'll watch her, and ever since Insidious came out, my eyes were on her because she's proved herself in comedy time and time again too. And then Steve Carell, is a masterclass comedian. So, and he'll do it justice. I think everybody involved in this team is going to be great. So, I'm looking forward to this one a lot.
Yeah, I think reteaming Jon Stewart, Steve Carell again is going to be really fun. I caught the first 2 episodes of Space Force, and I know Brian heard some of this conversation. Jake, I don't know if you've watched this. I am not
yet.
into it.
It's I saw the trailer and I thought, what are they doing? I mean, it's just he's playing his office character in a military outfit is what it feels like. It's just absurd humor, and it's not so much. And I don't know how to put that show because I haven't watched it. I just saw the trailer and kind of went. I thought it was going to look better than this.
Yeah, the problem is it's not funny. The Office is funny. I mean, it comes from The Office Parks and Rec creator Greg Daniels, so I was expecting that style of humor. It has no humor like in it at all. It's one of the most dry shows I've watched in a while. It's very dry.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Anyway, let's try to pick it back up here with a couple other movies that we got coming out. This is a new one from Shudder called Yummy. It is it's a new zombie movie set inside of a European hospital. Comes out June 25th. Yeah, this movie looks like a lot of fun. I mean, zombie movies tend to be hit or miss, but this one looks like it's taken the horror comedy route when it goes with this. It looks like it has a lot of fun gore gags. Yeah, Yummy looks like a lot of fun.
It'll be the first thing you watch when it premieres, right?
I mean, it looks like just a fun Friday night movie.
Shudder's good at that. I have fallen in love with that station. I went there for Joe Bob, but then I stayed for everything else that they've got. It's great. I love it. They did a movie a while back, I think called Trick, I think was the name of it. It's like about a Halloween haunted house that ends up being a little more real than they bargained for.
Did you like that one?
Watching that.
Yeah,
I loved that one.
Man,
I thought it was so much fun.
I couldn't get into it, but I'm gonna watch it again this Halloween because I feel like I was just not in the mood because I watched it in like April or
For
May.
me, it's going to be another Halloween season classic for me, and I watched it in the middle of like April.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I felt the atmosphere, and I love that movie. And if I think the one thing though about this movie, Yummy, is that I have a hard time getting into movies that are set in Eastern Europe. Like Hostel, I didn't like at all, but it was mainly because it was like, I don't know, it just feels cold over
great.
there, and it's not that great. How it made 3, I'll never know. But
I like Hostel.
You do? Did you like part 3?
I've only seen the first 2. I stopped when as far as I could get into it. I mean, they're not fun watches, but I liked it. I liked the first 2. I've heard the third one's not good, so I just stopped at 2.
But with this, I think it's going to be it'll be fine and it'll be fun. And Shudder has a tendency to make a few hit or misses, but I think judging by the trailer, it'll be a hit.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to get into it. But 1, I'm tired of zombie movies, and then 2, it's set in Eastern Europe, and the place just feels cold to me. I don't know. It's like it's the same thing I feel like I get whenever I see pictures from North Korea. I'm like, oh, this is cold, where they have boiled radiators for dinner, and I hope one day to see a picture of a jar of peanut butter that America sends them. So, it's New Europe. But
yeah, I tend to be sick of zombie movies too, but then it feels like almost every year a zombie movie comes along and it's like, yeah, I get it. I like when they're done right, they're done right. This one at least looks like it's going the comedy route, which I think tends to help out a bit. So, yeah, that's Yummy. Shudder, June 25th. Last one that we got here is a new Mel Gibson movie. Force of Nature hits VOD June 30th. It is about Mel Gibson, an ex-cop who teams up with a current cop played by Emil Hirsch and his daughter Kate Bosworth to take on a group of thieves that have entered their apartment, with the twist being it is set in a hurricane.
This made by the same guy that did the Hurricane heist.
No, that was your boy from the first Fast and the Furious, Brian.
Yeah, I know. It was Rob Cohen. I know that.
Force
This
of
movie,
Nature.
yeah.
Man, Jake, what'd you think of this trailer?
I think it's gonna be fun. Just balls to the wall fun. It's gonna be, I mean, not great, but I'm gonna have a great time watching it.
Great big popcorn movie.
Oh yes, absolutely. And Mel Gibson's career has made a good turnaround recently. He's been doing a lot of good projects, and so his decisions making movies has been better. And I think he's got a good agent. And I think that this movie is going to be a lot of fun. The whole hurricane thing just is a perfect little addition. It's just like I remember, like Crawl wasn't necessarily about the alligator so much as it was about the storm around it as well, and all the human stuff inside. So I think that this will be about a hurricane, but it's also going to be that father-daughter thing. It's going to make an impact. I don't know. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it looks
I'm just
like
jaw flapping at this point, but
it looks
I
like
think
a
it'll be
fun throwback action movie for Mel Gibson to be in.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
every dad is gonna be like, "Yeah, that movie looks awesome. Let's rent it." And
Yep.
that's what it feels like. It feels like if you go to like the video store, you pick out your movie, and your dad sees this movie about Mel Gibson kicking ass during a hurricane, he's gonna be like, "Yep, we're watching this tonight." So, and I'm all for those kind of movies. Like I think this movie looks like a ton of fun, big old popcorn movie, like Brian said, and yeah, I mean, it has a fun title too, Force of Nature.
Sounds like it
Right.
should be like a rom-com.
But
Yeah.
it's got multiple
Wasn't it?
meanings, Brian.
Wait a minute,
What was that
wasn't?
Ben Affleck movie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't there a Sandra Bullock movie? Forces
Yes.
of Nature.
Sandra and Ben, yeah. That nobody remembers.
Then why do we remember it?
Because our moms had it or something in their DVD collection pile.
Yes, you're right.
I
1990.
think that it was that one and the Bounce.
Oh.
My mom had. But then again, my mother, she's gonna kill me for revealing this information, by the way. But
Does she?
it's too funny
Will she
not
listen to this?
Maybe, I don't know. But she's a huge Ben Affleck fan, always has been. And her first ever email address, when she finally got email, was affleckgirl1 at yahoo.com. I mean, so that's why I remember these crap movies that he used to make. He's like
awesome.
Matthew McConaughey in that regard. It's like horrible, horrible rom-coms. And then, oh, he's actually a good actor.
That's hilarious.
Oh, Matthew McConaughey and your Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Hey, I love that movie.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, so that is not Forces of Nature, just Force of Nature, not Forces of Nature. That was the Ben Affleck movie. Yeah, that comes out this upcoming week on VOD. I'm hoping at least for like Irresistible and even Force of Nature that it's not the $19.99 VOD. I'm hoping for the like $7.99 or $9.99, so I will actually be more convinced to watch these movies.
Right.
But yeah, that's what we got coming soon for this upcoming week. And if you want to know everything else that is coming soon, please check out our full coming soon article on backlot605.com. Anyway, that's all we got for coming soon. And we're recording this a little early, so no news this week. So we're going to jump into our main topic for the week, and that is Mysterious Skin from 2004, written and directed by Gregg Araki. Man, Jake, okay, so we gotta start with this. Jake, why did you choose Mysterious Skin for today's topic?
Well, back when video stores were still a thing, and I was about 14 years old, I found it at Hollywood Video, I believe, and I don't know what guided me towards it. I didn't know if it could, probably because, I was just finding my sexuality and everything. And so I was digging through the movies, like, LGBT movies. But this one seemed to have I love the title, first of all, got me right away. And then just the simple poster art worked for me. But I put it in not knowing anything about it. And watching this movie at 14 years old, tends
That's
to stick
traumatic.
there. Oh yeah, yeah. It didn't. It messed with me, but then I immediately found the book and just absorbed that thing, and I I think that's why I didn't hesitate to say this is the movie I definitely wanted to talk about, because it's always been in my brain, you know, because it's one of those movies that you should not have watched as a kid, but you did, and so it's with you now.
Right. I would say, like, if it was me, and I unfortunately didn't not even realize this movie existed, and that's saying something because I remember even at one point, like, trying to find like older Joseph Gordon-Levitt films because that's like how I came across Brick.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, oh, I didn't even know this was a thing. I saw that was in it. I'm like, all right, you got me sold. I like JGL. Let's go for this. And then the thing starts up, and I'm like, I should have read the synopsis.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
even so, I had never heard of this before. Jake had mentioned it, and I looked it up right away. And reading the IMDb synopsis does not do this movie justice for what it says and what is actually contained in this movie. So I'll read the synopsis here, and then I'll let Jake give us the actual synopsis for the movie.
Yeah, I'm
So
curious because I never even looked at it.
yeah, so the IMDb synopsis is a teenage hustler and a young man obsessed with alien abductions cross paths, together discovering a horrible, liberating truth, which is all contained in this movie. But there's a lot more to this movie. There's a lot more under the skin of this movie, if you will. So Jake, I'll throw it off to you. If you could give a synopsis of this movie, what would you say this movie is about? And yeah, just go ahead, take it from there.
Well, in a nutshell, I think the movie's about trauma and childhood trauma in particular, that you get to see how it impacts two different people. So
Hmm.
what they should have told you right off the bat, almost as a trigger warning, because I think that this movie needs one. If you were one of those, if you were an unfortunate kid who was molested, but so yeah, the idea is that these two boys are molested by their coach, their little league coach. One of them grows up thinking it was some kind of act of love, and he goes out and down a downward spiral of prostitution, leading to some gnarly encounters. But then the other boy, Brian, yeah, that's his name, Brian,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
was he blocked it out completely, and it happened to him twice. And each time it happened, he blocked it out and thought that he was abducted by aliens. And so his obsession is trying to just put the pieces back together over his blackouts, and trying to find other people that might have had an alien encounter of sorts. And it's his mystery to solve. I don't think that Gordon Levitt's character, Neil, cares that much about what happened at all in comparison to this kid, because he didn't black it out. He thought it was
He
great.
he knew what it was. Well, he remembers everything, I should say.
Right. He remembers. Um, but he took it differently, and I think that that the film itself examines those two different um, what's the word I'm looking for? But so it takes those two different people and examines them appropriately, and saying this can happen or this can happen to you.
The two very very similar experiences, but then the paths they go on after this is very
Right.
very different.
You got it. Yeah, so that's the movie. It's dark and it's grim. I think that it does have a lot of light in it, but you have to really sit it through to find it, because the most of the movie is very, very dark and hard to sit through.
Yeah, this was like I said, this was my first time watching it, and getting into the movie, about the first 15-20 minutes, you get Neil, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as a child, he's kind of the introduction into this movie, and his interactions with the baseball coach are pretty much what you're introduced to in the beginning of this movie. And immediately when it got into the child molestation stuff, you feel it in your gut right away, and then it just doesn't leave for the entire runtime of this movie. And then you get to the final 15-20 minutes where Neil is explaining to Brian what happened to them as kids, and it's just the entire life force inside of you gets sucked out, and like you're just in this moment with these characters.
You don't even have the energy to cry at that point.
No,
Right.
I felt like you hit the nail on the head. Like I felt like I was going to, but I couldn't. It just leaves a sick feeling in your stomach. But it's not. But that's the biggest thing I'll give to this movie, where other movies maybe go exploitive. This movie never does. I think it's very thoughtful in everything that it portrays in this movie. It shows real life. It shows traumatic instances, but it's never exploiting those. That's just the way I really liked that this movie did not want to exploit these things, but rather present them in a real and thoughtful manner. That's the one thing I just really loved about Mysterious Skin.
Yeah, its realism approach works wonders because when you think they're about to cross a line, maybe they shouldn't, they don't. They pull back just enough to where, if we show this, we're now in exploitation territory. But if we hold back just a bit or shoot it from this angle, it's not going to come off as crass.
Yeah.
But I think that some of those sequences, you feel like a fly on the wall just watching something happen. In particular, I think Neil's rape sequence in New York was incredibly hard to watch, but extremely well made. And that, I think that's the reality for a lot of street hustlers sometimes too, because that'll happen. And that's just one example of, I think, how real they tried to go with it while retaining a careful eye on where that camera's being pointed.
Yes, I never felt, I don't know if gross is the right word, but I didn't feel like it was exploiting anything to it made me feel uncomfortable without having to explicitly show everything in this movie. It implies a lot of things, and like you said, Jake, the camera knows where it needs to be placed during pretty much every moment in this movie. And yes, that scene towards the end of the movie where Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is trying to play, he's trying to live a straight life. He's trying to go have a job. He's trying to make an honest living, and then he falls back into those pitfalls from earlier in the movie where he goes and resorts to prostitution out of either it's just an instinct to go at that point and go and do it, or again just falling back into those tragic pitfalls that he had earlier in his life. And that scene with him in that guy's apartment it sucks the life out of you again. Most of the scenes in this movie do, and that scene, it doesn't show anything, but it doesn't mean that this stuff
doesn't happen
portrayed in this movie. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. I think that's maybe one of the other things to point out in this movie. It doesn't show a lot, but much like the traumatic experiences of real life children, we may not see that, but it doesn't mean this stuff didn't happen. Like all this stuff happens to real people, and I think that's the biggest thing about this movie is how real it is, and how uncomfortable it should make you feel, and how you need to understand that these are real situations and real tragedies that happen to people in the world.
Yeah, the sequences with the child actors were so well made, because you think that those kids might actually have seen some stuff or had to do stuff on camera, but every shot was carefully considered to make you feel it, but everything is safe. and everything's done, I think, masterfully. That even really high budget movies have trouble making you feel that what's happening on screen is real. But those quick cutaways or the close-ups work wonders for this movie, I think.
Yeah, and this movie is, I mean, it's filled with close-ups. Nearly every shot is either a mid or a close-up, and it makes you feel like Jake said earlier, you feel like a fly on the wall, like the entire movie, and it feels very much almost documentary at some points. It's just very much you're in the moment with these characters. You're never taken out of it. Even when it explores some of the more like the fantastical elements, like when it talks about the alien abduction, which I do like how they have that in this movie, how it's involves alien abduction, but that's his childhood trauma brought into that.
Manifestation.
Yeah, that's because I mean at that point, if you're a kid, and there's a point in the movie with is Brian, right? That's his name.
Yeah.
Brian Lackey.
Okay,
Yeah.
so earlier on in the movie, it shows him with his sister and his mom, and they see a UFO. So now is
Correct.
that there's a couple scenes in this movie I want to talk about and get your guys' take on those. Do you think that was an actual thing, or that is a figment of his imagination and trying to remember what happened to him as a child?
You know, when that first happened, that's the one thing about this movie that took me a little bit of the very beginning of it to understand what, you know, what this is going on, why the aliens versus the stuff that was going on with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, everything like that, to the point where once you actually get in the movie, I think that was all a manifestation of his imagination. I don't think that actually happened. I think that was a matter of that was a manifested memory that he created to help justify what he thought he was experiencing.
I think that sequence was because I had to think about it in terms of being a kid, and you like everybody around you is looking at one thing, but you're seeing it totally differently. Like it could have just been a plane flying close to the ground, but to him it was a UFO. Or they were all looking at something, but yeah, to him it wasn't that. And so we're seeing it from his point of view.
And at
That,
that
oh no, it is.
Yeah, and then at that point, I mean, depending on the time, the timeline of this, it would have been right around when he was unfortunately sexually molested by his baseball coach. So maybe at that point, he's trying to remember that point in time, and maybe also at that time he was watching. He was at that point. They show him watching TV with his mom. Maybe he was watching an alien show, and then they saw an airplane or whatever outside, and he put the two memories together. Because I mean, we all have that. We all have memories that we have that aren't 100% correct anymore, because our memories change as we get older, and our stories change. If you tell a story one way, it might not be the same the next time based on one of your memories. And the other scene I did want to bring up with Brian's character is the scene that they don't touch on it too much later in the movie when he meets up with Neil as an adult. But there is the Halloween scene where again, I believe this one is true to what happened, but again, I want your guys' take, where basically it has Neil sexually molest Brian as a child during Halloween. So do you guys think that is another figment of the imagination, or something that happened in real life? Because again, Halloween is a big thing, especially when we get later on in the movie. So I don't. How did you guys read that scene?
I think that with the fact that there's a third person, there's the girl there, there's the friend there, and the look on her face and whatnot, is that this isn't a figment of imagination and whatnot. This is a matter of Neil thinking this is what's correct, this is what's right based on his already experience. And so this is what he thinks he should be doing because of the trauma he's caused this poor kid with the sake of the fireworks. So I don't think that's made up, for the sake of the film, I don't think it's made up, but that is an experience. And I think that's what causes him the blackout, for the sake of when the coach finds him for the second time.
Now, so I'm a little lost, because I I believe that the sequence with the fireworks is another kid. It's not Brian. This boy was tall and larger than
I
Brian.
could be wrong.
Wow.
But that sequence, that I mean, if we want to talk about that, it's in the book in a little further detail, which, God, you think a movie's hard to watch, but a book is hard to read. But that is essentially was going through his mental process of like, oh, coach does this to calm us down or to, make sure that nobody will tell on each other or something. So he goes down on the kid. But then Brian, meanwhile, gets scared at the haunted house, walks away, gets his glasses shattered, and then he ends up in the woods where Coach is.
Right.
And then they take him back with Neil later that night. And that would have been his second encounter with Coach. But of course, even then, especially with the lack of glasses and his inability to see properly, he's just immediately putting that in as an alien abduction. So yeah, that happened for sure. Because it's referenced later that happened to him twice.
I'm glad I got that clip because I was confused, especially since they never brought it up in the final act.
First time I saw the movie, yeah, I thought it was Brian too.
That makes sense. Okay, all right. So we got that cleared up. That's good.
You can tell we're the novice here.
I shouldn't know this movie as well as I do. Like, this is like one of those ones you only probably should watch once. But I've probably seen it 4 or 5 times, and I've read the book twice.
I'll kind of spin that in that, for the sake of the content and the film itself and the topics at hand, I totally get and understand where it's like, this isn't the kind of movie you just watch every single year.
Right.
That's just not going to happen. But for the sake of the performances to the people that are in this film, there isn't to me personally, I don't feel that there was a singular performance that was, lackluster. Even to these little kids who probably this is their first thing probably ever did. They did pretty well. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, kills it and whatnot. Elizabeth Shue as the mom does a great job. I mean, everybody in their respective roles. I mean, even the deadbeat dad, you see for all about 30 seconds in the film kind of thing, even still is very well portrayed with the gentleman that was portraying him. Like, you felt and you knew exactly who that character was. I don't think there was a person here that didn't bring their A game.
Oh yeah, I think that the performances outweigh its budget by far. And I hadn't seen Elizabeth Shue in a long time. And so, but I see she's been doing a number of movies like these kind of low budget, but she brings a certain gravitas to it, I think, that works. I mean, even by playing kind of a drunk mom, she's still a sweetheart of a lady, but I mean, everybody's got their problems, but just seeing her lie there on the couch, and with the vodka and orange juice, I'm like, I've seen that before. That's real. That like this home is real. None of this looks like a set. It all looks like they actually went somewhere, got somebody's house and filmed the interior and exterior of this whole town. I'm trying to find this one actor. Richard Riley. He played Charlie, the fat guy with the mustache that Gordon-Levitt hooks up with towards the beginning of the movie. Gregg Araki has worked with him on a number of occasions, and he's one of these character actors that show up in the weirdest places. He was in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 as Buddy the security guard. At the beginning of the movie, that's where I really remember him. But he's like, he'll get these actors that just show up and do their job and do it well, for even if it is for 5 minutes at a time. So when you surround yourself with a great team of actors, I think it can elevate a $500,000 budget tenfold.
Yeah,
because imagine if this movie had bad actors in it and unknowns that just were awful. be a
I,
totally different movie.
I
Yeah.
will say that seeing him in that scene, because the first thing I immediately saw is the guy from Office Space.
Yeah, that's right. He's in Office Space. Yep. He's got an idea for the jump to conclusions map. Yep.
Yes. So to think, I'm like, huh. Well, if movies were in a shared universe, this might explain the downward spiral of hit. No, I'm kidding. I will
You
also say
could.
Yeah.
is the other name that did pop up for me just in the credits that did I like the fact that she's been trying to pick things that are been outside of her childhood acting or whatever is Michelle Trachtenberg.
Yes.
That the first real thing that was like it's out of the Matilda is the
Harriet the Spy. Was it?
Harriet the Spy,
Mhm.
yes. And then
Yeah.
we go into like Euro Trip, and now the fact that she's actually picking stuff that is kind of outside of the realm.
Yeah, we so I grew up with like Richard Riley movies. Like he's just one of those character actors that I always just like stuck out in my eyes. Mostly the
Mhm.
mustache, probably. But yeah, so it was weird. It was weird seeing him in a role like this. But he's again, this movie has a ton of character actors in it, and I think they all help make this
That's.
movie add little gravitas to this movie.
I think that the one actor that I see in this film that knocks it completely out of the park, makes you feel and makes you think about his situation is Billy Drago, who has the AIDS patient with
Mhm.
all of the scars on his back. That sequence, I mean, you'll have nightmares from that. I mean, imagine how Neil feels in that moment, and his running out of there as soon as it's over. I mean, sequences like that they're not in any other movie.
Yeah.
They're not, and especially this collection of sequences. I don't think that there's a moment in this film that you can look away from the camera. You can't look away. It Every single scene is important. It has a purpose. There's not a wasted shot. And it's rare, and I'm really upset actually that not a lot of people saw it, and that it especially because it's not on any streaming services other than Criterion, and that's new.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's ever shown up on Netflix or Hulu or anywhere. So I don't know. I think it deserves a bigger audience than it got, because I think it's one of those movies that is a necessary film to
Yes,
see.
you don't walk away the same after watching it.
No, you don't.
There's another thing I want to piggyback off of what Jake said earlier. I feel like I know everybody in this movie. Like I feel like I went to high school with Brian and Neil. Like I knew people like that. I knew people like Neil's mom. Like you said, I knew that house. Like all these things are in our world. They're in real life. They're in our neighborhood. Like, and I think that just adds to the realism of it, where everybody can take something away from this movie. I mean, Elizabeth Shue she's fantastic in this movie. She doesn't get like that's one thing I want to touch on is the moms in this movie, because much like the main characters, the moms are very different on how they approach parenting as well. Because
Yeah,
with Elizabeth Shue, who's the mother of Neil, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, she's more of a friend to him than a mother, which at that point in his life and the traumatic moments he went through, he needed a parental figure, and he just never had that. His dad's out of the picture, and his mom's going on dates, and she's friendly and very nice to him and his friends, but she feels like a friend.
right.
Even so
And
much
not a
later in the
parent.
movie when she's hanging out with Neil's friend in his car, it just feels like she's just one of the gang. And on the inverse, Brian's mom is she has her thumb on everything about him. But then you get to those moments where his dad he's not in the picture. His parents are divorced. And it comes into a situation where, again, he needed a parental figure, and it was just out of unfortunate happenstance for him that his mom was, I believe they said she was at work, and his dad, he was kind of a deadbeat dad, so he wasn't there. And I just like the look, because it very much could have been they both came from broken homes, and that's the way it is. But no, they come from similar yet dissimilar homes, because they had loving mothers, but they were just raised in very, very different ways.
Oh, for sure. I think that Brian's mother is necessary for Brian, because he needs to, like, it's almost this feeling of need to escape a little bit that he starts to get, in particular when he goes out and just books it out to the farm to meet the abductee woman, who, by the way, is the only other place I've seen her.
24.
Marilyn 24, yeah, Chloe. And I'm just like, why are you in this movie? like at this point when this came out, I think they were on like season 3 or 4 of 24. So it was like, you're doing this bit part, and it's a weird person you're playing too. But
It's right up her alley, though.
it should be. I want to see her in more stuff.
She's done a
kinda,
lot of
since
TV.
24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know her from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. She plays
Is she in that?
Gail the Snail in that. But yeah,
She's in 3 episodes out of like what, 200?
Yeah, but that's Sunny.
She's in it.
She's in it, and she plays a very, very memorable character in that. Yeah,
she's a great comic too.
She is very funny.
Her stand-up work is great. But yeah, anyway, with I think that's why Brian's mom serves the purpose she does, because he lives under her roof, her rules kind of situation. It's not overly controlled, but just enough to where he needs to break free, and then hanging out with Eric, just to get to know Neil a little bit through him. It's almost like just being friends with him is like Eric said, I'm corrupting you, something his mother would not stand for.
Yeah, we should. I want to talk about Eric for a little bit, because he is. I mean, he's not given a whole lot of screen time, but I feel like the screen time he's given, he's a very important character and a very important bridge between the two leads of Neil and Brian. Like, just
absolutely. And I want his fashion sense real bad.
Yeah.
Like he looks awesome. Like with the hair, that whole Bride of Frankenstein look, but he's like I said about like not a wasted shot, not a wasted sequence. There's not a wasted character in this movie, and Eric is testament to somebody who doesn't have a lot to do, but without him, he is maybe the most integral person in the film to help glue the pieces together for Brian.
Yes. That's I would, and to kind of go back to when I was talking about the performances, his is another one of those performances where you're absolutely right. He could have been the kind of person like, this guy just shows up out of the middle of nowhere, just saying, hey, I knew this guy from 10 years ago, and he befriends him and he helps him start to navigate his own path before he even gets a chance to even meet Neil, and to kind of to form that bond to, somebody he didn't have beforehand.
Right.
Yeah, he feels like the character that he has his shit figured out. Like everybody else is trying to figure out, where they fit in life, or what happened in their past, or how to deal with their past, and he feels like he has his life pretty well figured out, especially compared to the rest of the characters, and he feels like that the rock for all of the characters in the movie, whether that be Neil or Brian or Neil's mom. He just feels like the rock for everybody around him, and I think that's needed in a movie like this. He adds a little levity to the movie. He's a fun character to have on screen, and I think that's very, very necessary for a movie with this subject matter.
Yeah, without him, this movie would be a good but absolutely lifeless hole.
Yes.
And he's much needed in this flick.
The next thing, I want to jump to the ending, the final scene on Christmas Eve, where our two leads finally meet up with each other again, 10 years since they last saw each other. By this point, Neil had gone to live in New York with his friend Wendy, and so he is coming back for the holidays. This is just a couple days after his rape incident in New York, and he's battered and bruised, but I think again there's a little symbolism to that, and we can talk about that. But basically, the two leads break into the house that once belonged to the coach, and Neil tells Brian everything about what happened to them as kids. And I love the editing during this scene, because it cuts from them sitting on the couch together to them as kids, and every time they're as kids there's this music playing, but when it cuts to them as adults, the music just stops, like dead in its tracks, like
Right.
stops, and you're stuck with those characters in that moment. Like I it's a very unique editing choice, and I love it, and I think it adds a lot of emotional impact to the entire scene.
That's Gregg Araki for you. Every movie he does, it's very stylized. I think this is his most minimal effort in that regard. But take his next flick, Smiley Face, which I think he needed to make that after this desperately, just to get the taste out of his mouth from this movie. But very, very quick editing. It's paced super, super fast. A lot of odd sequences, because we're dealing with Anna Faris, who is she's stoned out of her mind. So all of the editing has to do with her internal workings in her brain, the sounds she hears that are elevated, things she thinks are happening. So he really gets to show off his editing skills. And because I think his team has been the same since like Doom Generation. So each movie that he does, it's highly stylized like that. And so for him to pull restraint on Mysterious Skin and use it when necessary, those quick cuts, the music cues and everything, makes his work twice as effective as it normally is. Because by the end of most any Gregg Araki movie, you're tired, because there's so much color and boom and pizzazz to it. But this one, it's just utilized as necessary.
Yeah, this is my first Gregg Araki movie, and we
you
briefly
need to get through his stuff.
Yeah.
It's so good.
We briefly talked about it, but Blake, on the other hand, he's like, as soon as you watch Mysterious Skin, you're gonna want to watch all the other stuff, because he's like he's a filmmaker like no one else out there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to checking out what else he has, especially if you say it's very different than this, but in the same. Go ahead.
Smiley Face is your best next movie, because it'll take this kind of it'll be a much needed break from what you felt on this one to a totally different kind of movie, but it's still his signature touch, and it's hilarious too. Smiley Faces, I think I laughed more on that movie than I do most. So
yeah, I just looked up the cast for this movie. I'm like, yeah, that seems like a movie for me.
I will tell you, and this is just, and I didn't even realize it was the same guy, and it has been literally probably almost 2 decades since I've seen it and whatnot. Doom Generation is messed up.
Oh yeah.
If there's one thing I can say about that movie, that I don't remember a lot of it, other than it's very strange, and that whenever they buy anything, it's in $6.66. Anything comes into the exact amount. I'm intrigued after watching this to go back to rewatch that, knowing that
Right.
they're connected in that sense and whatnot, just because it is a very one of those movies that also you have to take a little bit of a breather in when you get done with it.
I felt like Doom Generation and a few other of his earlier films were like, they feel like Richard Linklater on acid and in high heel boots. They're very fly off the wall, just observational movies. Like, you're just watching these people, but his characters are unlike any other characters in any other movies. Every single film he puts out, it's, what are these characters going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Who are they? Because they're going to be bizarre in comparison to like this movie, which is highly realistic. Every other one of his movies is not. It's hyperdrive stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe the next step I got to take after this, and go watch the rest of his filmography, especially if it's not because this is a heavy movie to sit down and watch. Takes a lot out of you, and if you're saying these other ones are a lot more fun and more easier subject matter to get through in a watch. That seems like a lot of fun. Yeah, I'll definitely go check those out, because I've been trying to catch up on some of the films of the last 2-3 decades that I've missed, and some of the big directors, and hit their big ones. And yeah, this name has come up quite a bit for me, Gregg Araki. So yeah, let's get into some other thoughts on the movie. Do you guys have any other scenes or themes or characters that you guys would like to bring up for this movie?
I think we covered all of them, because it's not a long movie.
No.
And I think the one thing we can say about it is thank you, Greg, for not making it much longer, because it's it feels longer than it is. But at the same time, by the end of the movie, the one thing I can say is, like, I wasn't quite ready to say bye to them yet, because they just glued. I want to see where that goes.
Yes.
Really bad.
Right.
Yeah, I think especially the final shot that it leaves off on, where the camera's right above them and they're on the couch. I'm like, it feels like their characters are like you said, just beginning a new path. And that's a path like that would be probably much easier to watch than what this is, but this is a necessary one for us and them to go through. Yeah, I would like to again, but that's with any great movie though. You're stuck. You stop at the point where you want more, and I think this movie stops at the perfect moment. And yeah,
Right. That's a benefit of drama, I think.
I think I kind of think it does a good job of leaving exactly where it's at, because there you mentioned that it's the start of a new journey and whatnot, but we don't know what that journey is, so it's left up to us to discern what is the next step for these characters. We don't know, and it's our imagination that's going to say, is this going to be life going to be better for them? Is it going to be worse? Are they leaning on each other? So many questions that I think it's left to us to try to figure out, where does the story go.
Yeah, I think you're exactly correct. Yeah, I think I want to wrap up the conversation on Mysterious Skin, and get everybody just one or two final thoughts on the film as a whole, and after that, if you would recommend it and how you would recommend it to people. Brian, I'll start off with you then.
Well, I mean, I would recommend it in the sense of, it has got great performances. It has a prevalent storyline. It doesn't matter that this movie is how many years old. It will always have that the prevalence in that this is something that happens. This is something that we shouldn't be leaving underneath the rug. It is one of those things that I would definitely probably put the asterisks on it and say, hey, just to know when you go into this movie, it's not, it's dark, it's gritty, but it's true to form. So, you have very, again, solid performances that I think really draw out a very well crafted story, but you're definitely going to feel it by the end.
Yeah, I think when it comes to recommending this movie, it's difficult to do that, because as you're starting to recommend it, you also have to understand what they're about to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Should they watch it? And so you have to be very choosy about who you're recommending this one to. But you never see a movie like this very much anymore, where you have this perfect cast, a talented filmmaker, where everything gets done within a limited budget and has the impact it does. I mean, everything, even down to the very simplistic musical score for the film, which works wonders for this flick. And then having that Sigur Rós track at the very end works on every level. And so that's how I would recommend it. Look, it's pretty much a perfect movie, but just strap yourself in, because it's not an easy one to sit through, however perfect it may be. Because I really tried this time when rewatching it to find a fault, and it was really hard to do. it's close to faultless, I think.
Yeah. For me, it's one of those movies where you'll never forget it. You'll never forget where you were watching it. You'll never forget the subject matter of the movie. And I think you have to, if you're going to recommend the movie, you go in with the disclaimer and let them know about the subject matter. I won't, give away story details or anything, but let them know what the subject matter is. And like we said, it's about childhood trauma and what you go through that and the paths that you go down after experiencing childhood trauma. And I think you have to lead off with that, but then go in knowing you're going to get, like you said, Jake, it's a near perfect movie. There's perfect casting, perfect editing in this movie. The score is phenomenal. The themes it goes through. There's so many different things in this movie that just are working the entire time. And yeah, I would highly recommend it, but know what you're getting into first, and have your favorite comedy sitting up next in queue after this. So yeah, that's Mysterious Skin. So let's leave off on a light note. What movie would you guys watch right after this to kind of clear your mind and get your mind back in a good groove?
I might have to watch a Kevin Smith movie.
Jake, what was yours?
Batman and Robin.
Batman and
just
Robin.
do it.
Yeah.
It'll clear everything out completely. It's like a good enema.
Yeah.
Because you just like, this is trash. Okay, what was that last movie I just watched? Can't remember because I'm looking at trash.
Yeah, I went and watched a Stallone movie from the 90s, and then I watched The Simpsons after. Simpsons was a good palate cleanser. So, yeah.
Hey, but in all seriousness, though, Smiley Face is a great next movie because it'll clear this last one, and it's the same guy.
There you go. So then I think that's a great recommendation. Then Smiley Face right after Mysterious Skin. Jake, thanks for joining us on this. Thank you for bringing up this movie and putting me and Brian through a traumatic experience like this.
You're very welcome. I'm always here for that. So.
Yeah. No, seriously. Thank you for recommending this movie. We have got quite the list of I feel the 4 movies we're covering this month are very, very, very different, and I think we hit a good point here, a little over halfway through this mini series. So thank you for bringing up Mysterious Skin and opening our eyes a little more to some of the indie cinema of the early 2000s.
You got it.
Next week, we're going to round off our Pride Month discussion. We're going to be talking about the movie Gods and Monsters from 1998. I figured this would be this was recommended by our guest for the episode, Greg Mills, and I figured it'd be a good tie-in to what we covered earlier in the year when we talked about Universal Monsters. So yeah, this is a movie about director James Whale, who directed Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein, and yeah, I just figured that was a great way to kind of end this and tie it into a series that we did earlier. Jake, have you watched Gods and Monsters? Do you like the film?
I have. Ian McKellen is just spectacular in this movie, and did you see it yet?
I have not watched Gods and Monsters yet. No.
It's fantastic. He gives one of his best performances of his career in that thing, second only to maybe Gandalf or as the old Nazi in Apt Pupil, I think is one of his best movies, hands down. It's so good.
You when you said Gandalf, I immediately was going to go to Apt Pupil because that was one of those movies for me that was just a blind buy, and I'm so glad that was the movie that I had the opportunity to experience. Apt Pupil is fantastic.
That's another one of these kind of movies that you never forget it, and it's pretty traumatizing. I did read the book for Apt Pupil. It's in one of Stephen King's short story collections, and yeah, that kid does way more nasty stuff in that book than he does in the movie. I think he murders a few people. I mean, homeless Joes on the side of the street. I mean, that movie's messed up, but the book is woo. But Ian McKellen is, I think, try to find a better performance than him in Apt Pupil is hard, but The Gods and Monsters is up there. Absolutely.
I'm very stoked to finally watch this movie. It's been on my watch list for a very long time. So I'm excited to finally watch Gods and Monsters, and that's next week's film, which I believe it is on Amazon Prime right now. So if you want to keep up with what we're watching and reviewing, that'll be on Amazon Prime for you guys to check out. So again, Jake, thank you for joining us on this episode. Where can people find you and follow your doings online?
Well, I had an Instagram handle for a while where I was reviewing movies, and then I went to school. So that's really fallen behind. But my main at Instagram handle is at Jake Martin Tele, Tele, after a Fender Telecaster. So
Awesome.
That's what I do. I just post guitar stuff, movie stuff, all kinds of that kind of stuff. So
awesome. Brian, where do you want the people to follow you on the interwebs?
Well, I've been dark for a little while because I need to play some serious catch up. You can find me on Instagram on LP Freak, and then on Letterboxd on LP Freak Forever.
It's almost like you have kids that were trying to sabotage today's show.
Could you tell?
I'm going to assume you did not watch Mysterious Skin with them.
Oh no, they were totally asleep.
That's a good thing. You can follow me on Letterboxd, just Casey Kelderman, and then you can follow us on backlot605.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can follow the podcast and subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and YouTube. Yeah, I think that's about all we got to wrap up for today's show. Yeah, do you guys have any other final thoughts before we hit the stop record button and say goodnight?
Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Absolutely, Jake. We'll have you on both of the shows very soon. So thank you again.
All right.
You got it.
All right. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll check you out next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.